Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:34 p.m. I'm calling this meeting of the Maple Broadband Executive Committee to order for the 3rd of September, 2025. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I've distributed that. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Would anyone like to make any changes to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, raise your hand or say aye. Okay. Next up, approval of the minutes. August 26th were actually, I have a draft now, but I've not distributed them. So the ones that were distributed were for August 20th. So I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
Move to approve as presented.
Okay. Can I get a second? Nancy? All right. Any edits or comments on the minutes? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, minutes have been approved. Public comments. Would anyone like to make a public comment at this time? Okay, moving right along. Chair reports.
I'll make it brief because, as Ellie said, we do have a lot of ground to cover. And just as kind of a preview, there's, I believe, 2 critical path items in front of us that we will be discussing in today's meeting. And so we will need your help to get past those, to at least get an understanding of them. One is the audit, getting the audit sorted out in time. And then the other one is a concern I have regarding environmental permitting. And I don't really know enough about that to know whether or not that's something to worry about, but I believe it's a critical path item, and I'm going to be asking Ellie to help us understand that. That's a NEPA. So that's it. That's my report.
Okay, well, we'll be covering both of those below, so we will get into those when we get into them. So executive director report, I will also keep quite brief because I think that pretty much all the things that are high priority for me are down below on the agenda, but obviously responding promptly to anything that Bonnie requires for the audit is up there. And the other really big focus right now is the affordable long drop program, and obviously continued work in marketing, and then to Steve's point, now that we are the provisional winners of BEAD, yay, starting to think about, obviously we have a discussion later on in this committee meeting now about, to get some guidance from you folks about how far we would like to proceed there with spending money, because just a reminder is the earliest date for pre-award expenditures was the application submission date, and so we're past that date now, but we have not yet actually been awarded the award. It needs, the NTIA needs to approve, and then there needs to be a grant agreement, and until those things happen, we are at risk and nothing is certain. So that's the discussion that we're going to have, part of the discussion we're going to have later on. Any questions for me on what I'm busy with? One other thing I didn't mention, because it's not something I'm doing in the next 3 days, but it's something I will start doing before the next executive committee meeting. Lynn, take note, is we need to work on our budget for next year. And because we need to have that approved by the governing board in early October in order to be able to get it out, because that, mid-October is in the next governing board meeting, I think the 14th. So that means that we need to be working on that in September. And so, Lynn, just be prepared when you get back. It would actually be great if you could send me your availability for the first 2 weeks of October so that I can move ahead and schedule a finance committee meeting with everyone else, but for a time that you will actually be able to attend.
Okay. And just one quick thing, Ellie, and Steve and I will share it with you or send it to you. Budget implication is that we did get the % increase on health insurance for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it's 9% versus what we put in for 25%.
That's great.
So there's some savings there.
That is good. We like savings.
Yep.
Very good news. Okay. Great. All right. So moving on, the next item in the agenda is executive committee meeting scheduling. Now, we actually don't have either Adam here or Cy. I'm surprised we don't have Adam here. I think maybe a separate topic we should talk about is how do we make sure that we actually do, in fact, have someone at ACRPC, because I usually go in there if I know he's not going to be attending, but I wasn't aware he wasn't going to be attending today. So we need to kind of think about that so that we're in compliance with open meeting law. But anyway, we did touch on this the last time, that we would love to have Zapata join the executive committee, but we need to discuss having a different time. But I think that probably this is not the time to do it without Cy or Adam here.
That's problematic. We were kind of hoping to get the governing board approval of our new executive committee member, but we can't do that then?
Well, I mean, there's nothing to say that you couldn't call. I mean, we can have a discussion now, and then I guess as chair, you could try and reach Cy and speak to Adam and see if you could reach some sort of proposal offline.
Yeah, I had thought that you had spoken with Adam in some form or fashion a while ago about Monday, moving it to Monday. Is that the case?
He did say Mondays were generally better, yes.
So do we want to talk about moving it to Monday?
Does anyone know Cy's preferences in this regard?
Well, I guess the question would be a straw poll. If we've got everyone but Cy saying yes, then I can reach out to her easy enough and try to get it sorted, and got a couple days to reach out to her. I think she's out of she's like in Canada or something like that. Do you know where she is? She's in Canada. Yeah, with terrible bandwidth. I understand that. So, but yep. I can reach out to her and see. In which case, Ellie, would the changed be whenever we have an executive committee meeting? Hypothetically, it would be on Mondays, start at 3:30, end at 5.
I think what Zapata is going to say is that it needs to be the second and fourth week and not the first and third week, because she has conflicts on the first and third.
Second and fourth. So perhaps a straw poll from the other executive committee members now about whether or not the second and fourth Monday of the month would work for you. It will work for me. I can make it work. You're good. Okay, thanks, Shannon.
You mean 3:30 to 5, right?
3:30 to 5.
And when would that start?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nancy.
When would that start?
Yeah, it would start at 3:30 and end at 5.
No, what date would it start?
The next one we have, whatever that is, it'll be the 4th. It'll be the 4th Monday of this month.
So we'd skip next week Monday because we're just meeting now, and there's also a VCBB meeting. Because that's the other thing, is the VCBB does meet on the second and fourth Mondays, and so every once in a while there might be something that requires me or creates a conflict, but that's really the exception, not the rule. They're almost always virtual, and usually we're not required, or we can catch up the recording later.
Right, and those meetings happen midday, and ours happen at end of day.
Yeah, so I think it should be fine. I mean, next Monday's is in person, and I do plan to go. So next Monday would be a conflict for me. But that's, like I said, that happens once or twice a year. It's the exception, not the rule.
So it'd be if we were not meeting right now, Nancy, the meetings would be on the 8th and the 22nd, and then in October, the meetings would be the 13th and 27th. Does that help?
Yes.
What do you think?
I think that'll work for me.
Okay, so we're good with Shannon and Nancy and me. So
and Lynn.
We're good with
and Zapata.
Lynn. And Zapata.
Well, we better be good for Zapata. We're doing it for her. All right.
Okay.
So let me reach out to her. So can we kind of we don't need to vote on this since it's really not a decision. So I will reach out to Cy in the next couple of days in hopes that we can get her confirmation about the new proposed meeting schedule and whatever I need to do to reach her at this point. And if we get a go from her, then I'll pass the word on to the rest of the executive committee, and we'll also have a discussion about this at the governing board meeting next week, seeking approval to appoint Zapata as an executive committee member. We don't need to review with them when we meet. It's neither here nor there. It's only for our convenience at this point. So Great. Thank you.
Okay,
So
thank you,
one
guys.
one quick question. When is the governing board meeting?
Next
Second,
Tuesday evening, second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday.
and for what it's worth, Zapata, if you can't attend those, it's okay. It would be nice.
No, it's fine. I just don't, for whatever reason, I don't have it on my calendar, so I don't have it as a recurring. So I just want to make sure that I do have it there. And then moving forward, assuming that the governing board votes me in on Tuesday, the 9th, when would be the next executive board meeting that I
22nd.
should put on the 22nd? Okay.
October 13th.
No, September. Sorry,
September
sorry,
22nd and
September
then,
22nd.
All right, okay.
okay.
So again, Zapata, all of our governing board meetings, we hold 11 a year, and we don't hold one in August, as you know. And other than that, it's always the second Tuesday in the month, and it always starts at 5.
Yep.
Ends to 6:30. Okay.
Okay, so moving on, so 6B, the next item on here is personnel matters. And so this was something that was floated in executive session last week. I had suggested that that the executive committee consider a bonus for Darlene for her excellent and very responsive work, dropping everything for us and just basically being wonderful during this mad rush to get the 2024 audit done under the wire. So Lynn and I had a discussion about that, and I think, Lynn, it's only fair if you make the proposal. You're muted.
Yep.
There we go.
So Ellie and I talked about it, and we'd like to propose giving Darlene a $1,000 bonus for prioritizing us.
Darlene is our bookkeeper.
Yes.
Yes.
And she's more than a bookkeeper. She's amazing. Maple
Mhm.
Broadband is really lucky to have her.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and she's worked really hard doing some very sophisticated accounting.
Okay.
So anyway, that's the proposal.
You feel pretty good about it too, Ellie?
Yep.
And let's think it through. So let's say we all agree that that's a good idea and we want to approve it. How do we go about awarding it to her? Are we going to write something up? Are we going to do an in-person presentation? Any thoughts on that?
Do we need to be in executive session to do any more talking about this or not? I'm just
No, I don't
raising
think so.
the question.
No,
Okay.
because she's not an employee.
Yeah, it's not a
Okay.
personnel matter.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, Lynn, are you seeing her this week in person? Maybe you can just tell her and say, thank her in person and tell her to expect an additional payment.
Okay. Yes, I am going to see her on Friday, and I am happy to convey our thanks on behalf of the executive committee.
What's the form of payment going to be? Is it, I think what we talked about, is it going to be just a check? We're going to write her a check?
Yeah, well, usually she's paid by ACH.
Right.
Yeah,
Is
so
she-
I think it will just happen that way, and I think, we'll have to, I made a proposal, all of you need to vote on it, and that goes into the minutes. And if you agree on that, then I would just be the person who says, Darlene, let's add an additional ACH payment.
I move we award Darlene a $1,000 one-time check for performance above and beyond the call of duty in support of our efforts regarding accounting, general accounting and BEAD in particular. Is there a second? Okay, we have a couple seconds there, Shannon and Nancy. Discussion?
So I'm just assuming that budget-wise, this is insignificant and is not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And fine. I just had to ask the question.
Good question. It's a good question. Okay. Any other discussion items, folks? Okay. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Great. Thank you all. Okay, so the next item on the agenda then is BEAD. So obviously you've all seen the good news. The first item I want to talk about briefly, I wrote this in an email to all of you, but there have been, as with many states, there have been some third-party analyses of awardees and so on and so forth. And for some reason, the people at Broadband IO or whoever was the source of that data came up with the idea that we had 533 eligible BSLs as part of our bid. And in fact, we had 1,747. And obviously, with that denominator, it makes it look like our cost per BSL is really high. And that's not what we want. We don't want that. So I've submitted already onto Broadband IO a request for correction. And the information from VCB is in fact correct. If you look at the list of eligible locations and then you correlate to our project ID, the files are correct and they show the correct number. But I'm planning to submit in public comments for the VCBB to ask them please to put a summary of the eligible BSLs per awardee in order to facilitate third-party analysis of these awards. It's just, the same information, making it a little bit easier so people don't have to do the math, and so we can more easily correct this misinformation. Because the concern is that the NTIA may pay more attention to the press, or they may, get our name as, someone flagging, look at this irrational high cost per passing of this maple broadband in Vermont, and who knows? So we're just trying to set the record straight.
BSL stands for Broadband Serviceable Locations. I think before BEAD existed, I think we used to call it like an E911 address. It's basically an address that could receive broadband service, and it's the term that it's always being used here now.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. And just a sidebar on that, at some point in a couple of weeks or maybe months, depending how long it takes us, I want to have a conversation around passings versus BSLs versus and total addressable market, because these things are not all the same. I mean, a broadband serviceable location is something that the FCC has defined as a location likely to take broadband. So, for example, on a single parcel, your house is a BSL and your barn is not. Those are two passings under the E911 system, and so when you look at something like take rates, our take rate is 16.5% according to passings and 18.5% according to BSLs. It's just important that we understand what these numbers actually mean.
Mhm.
Anyway, so if anyone has anything else they would like me to put into the public comment to the VCBB about the BEAD awards, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to put in that, thank you very much for your work, and you've done a great job, and please make this one small change. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is Steve's comment on NEPA. So I'm going to preface this by saying I don't understand all the rules yet. There is a lot of material to review, and this is something that was... So RSM did a webinar on the permitting requirements some months back, and one of the things that had been flagged as a concern, both by VCBB staff and by Vakuda, Krista in particular, is that we need to understand better the NTIA's interpretation of all of this stuff, because there was some guidance at some point. I'm not sure there's official NTIA guidance or what, but it was coming across as you need to receive all of your permitting for the entire project before you start any sort of construction work, which is absolutely bonkers nonsense. I don't want to put Jose here on the spot. If you happen to know anything, Jose, you can comment, but I think basically where we are with this is that those of us who are provisional BEAD awardees need to spend some time digging into the details of this and try and working and hopefully staff at some point soon will come up with have a webinar or discussion around helping us parse through how do we actually practically do this. But I think this is more of an open item than here's exactly what we plan to do and why. But this relates to the next discussion of where do we start spending money. And I think that understanding that this is a critical path item to some, if not all, construction puts it into the category of things where I'm going to recommend that I take the time to figure out what we need to do and the costs and bring that back to you so that we can get started on that as soon as humanly possible.
So I'll point out that I am the person who is responsible for coordinating this part of the permitting process. We've had some preliminary meetings with the state level partners, and RSM has participated. I have to in some of there's a tool that they're using to sort of decide if there are areas that are going to be exempt, depending on what the data you upload and all that stuff. They're not yet very clear on all the rules, like Ellie said, and we're trying to get an exact sort of roadmap, something to be in a piece of paper, and then have a presentation. I'm working with RSM to do that. So as soon as we have that be set, there are some general guidelines, but yeah, they actually NTIA created a tool which they say is to save time, and everything gets uploaded into that. So you have access, just so you know, you will have access to RSM when it comes to the permitting. So I'll be talking to Ellie about setting up when we set up a sort of a kickoff with them. And this question about, I can't give you the exact answer either. About there's a lot of changes today. They were issuing changes. So.
Yep.
So
Surprise,
Ellie, can I
surprise.
just ask a question? When it comes to NEPA, is it because, so does everybody know even what NEPA means? The National Environmental Policy Act. So it's a federal umbrella that captures projects in a variety of capacities where they have to undergo rigorous environmental review, which includes all of your natural resources, rare, threatened, or endangered species concerns, bats being one of those. So like clearing of trees, for example, would fall under that. Crossing of rivers, lakes, ponds, streams, wetlands. Also archaeological review. So if we're doing underground disturbance, that's where that would get triggered. I know that some utility projects, big utilities like Velco, GMP, routinely fall under NEPA. That's because they're triggering the Army Corps of Engineers permitting process. So I don't know what that means for us if we're utilizing existing infrastructure to get from point A to point B. I don't know where we would necessarily trigger that review. But if we're going into new areas, for example, then that could be a concern. If you trigger Army Corps, there's a variety of ways in which that gets triggered. Sometimes just going over a waterway with an overhead line is enough. Like if we had to put a line over Otter Creek, for example, that could trigger a NEPA review. So I intersect with NEPA permitting because of the wetland work that I do and my liaisons with Army Corps. So if it's beneficial for me to sit on any meetings to better understand what that process is looking like, then I'm happy to do that because that's one area that I think I actually know about.
I know. I was thinking, Zapata, like how wonderful for you to be joining the executive committee this exact time. And I think one other thing that I'll add is that as Vakuda, we did an RFP to help us some months ago to help us prepare for BEAD, to help us better estimate the cost of environmental permitting, but we wound up not. So we got some bids and we selected a firm that does a lot of this work, and we elected not to go forward using even Vakuda Spices funds to help inform the cost for BEAD, just because the cost, even to estimate the cost, was really excessive, and we thought, well, if we're going to have to pay all this money to analyze every single foot where we're planning to put up fiber, let's wait until we've actually got provisional awards before we do that. So, again, we're not the only CD that's doing this. It could be possible that some of these costs could be paid by Vakuda. I don't know, but regardless, we all have to come up with a plan. And to your point, Zapata, my understanding is that anything which is an existing utility poles where we're going on there should fall under something called categorical exclusions or CADEX.
Right.
But again, as I understand, we need to have someone look at this and check off to say, yep, these routes are good to go. And then the other thing is, as I referred to earlier, we need to understand based on the NTIA guidance, are we allowed to get going on those things while we're waiting for other permitting? Or, is this really like a finish to start kind of constraint? I sincerely hope not, because like I said, that's bonkers. And I feel like this administration would probably not take that approach, but until the guidance has been issued, don't know.
As a separate question, is the internet providers, are we covered under Section 248 at all, like the other utility companies, or not?
What do you mean by that exactly?
So Section 248 is similar to Act 250. It's an umbrella regulatory program that's administered by the state of Vermont. So Velco, GMP, other electric, Vermont gas, cell towers fall under Section 248, which is a utility commission, public utility commission review and issuance of permits. So if Velco is putting in a new substation, if they're running a new utility line, if there's a new cell tower going up, then you have to go through Section 248, which is a very similar review as to NEPA, but captures a lot of other programs that otherwise would not be regulatory in nature, such as fish and wildlife concerns.
Yeah, I've never, Jose, you can feed in here.
Yeah.
That's never come up for us before. I've only ever heard of it in the context of new cell towers going up or anything like that. We typically, as CUDs, there's another section of law, the statute reference of which is escaping me, where we actually get to ride on existing utility easements, at least under state law. But again, this is a national environmental law that we're particularly concerned about here. Anything you want to add, Jose?
No. There's so much to it that I think I'd rather have something that's kind of either, clearly defined steps that we confuse it too much. But we have had meetings with all our partners here in the state. They've all been very friendly and seem very knowledgeable and able to help us. And I've held these meetings with my consultants, RSM, and everyone seems ready, except that as Ellie pointed out, the rules are not exactly as clear as one might desires.
Yeah. So we're sort of in the pre-planning stage now,
Yeah.
And I think that's a good segue. I'm going to stick here in the chat. This is directly from the BEAD RFA, and so this is listing the limited permissible activities that we can do prior to the completion of environmental and historic preservation review process. So again, this is assuming the worst case scenario of finish to start, and it might get lightened up from here, but these are the current rules. So a lot of these things are obviously directly related to the environmental permitting, and we're all, including VCBB, we have the horse here, horse's mouth as it were, telling us that there's still things that are being worked out. So there's environmental permitting. The other bit that's in here is actually the first bullet and the last bullet. So one is pre-construction planning, and the second is limited preliminary procurement. So I know Steve wanted to talk about both of these. I think my view is, well, I'll tell you my opinion right now. I mean, who knows what the NTIA is going to do, but if you guys look at the balance of our pre-construction grants, we certainly have money right now to be paying for pre-construction services, detailed design and whatnot. Even in the event that we don't get BEAD, I mean, obviously it will be a gut punch, because that's money that we could otherwise use for make ready and building other routes if we don't win it. But I think that what Steve and I are planning to do is to meet with JSI. That, if you guys recall, there's a part of this is new to you, but we did an RFP pre-BEAD, which had a pre-award and a post-award component. And so JSI is the winners of that, and we've been very happy with their engineering work up to this point. And in the pre-BEAD, the pre-award submission, they've been super responsive. Their professional engineer, again, is the only one they had licensed in the state of Vermont, and really dropped on a dime to get things done for us. So they've been really great. So my plan is to work with Steve to get with JSI and to refine costs, and most probably recommend is at the very next meeting that we move forward with JSI on completion of detailed design, because we have a high-level design for BEAD areas in Middlebury and Ripton, but we don't have a detailed design. And the big concern is that with everyone getting BEAD awards all at the same time, we don't want to be stuck in a situation where we take so long to tell them go that then they can't get to what we need to have done for a while. And it is a relatively small scope at the end of the day, so they should be able to fit it in. But we don't want to be so risk averse here that we are shooting ourselves in the foot to save a couple of tens of thousands of dollars. So that's my basic spiel on detailed design. Steve, you want to add something?
Well, I think Nancy's had her hand up for a while. Yeah. Nancy.
Well, this is on an unrelated BEAD question. Is that okay?
Sure.
I'm just curious. I noticed that Starlink got a piece of the Vermont BEAD pie, and I wonder what it got.
I actually did a little bit of research on it with some documents that were sent out by Vacuda. The one that really caught my eye was that Starlink got pretty much all of EC Fiber's area. And so what's interesting about that is that everybody in their area is fully served pretty much. But what's the leftovers are what Starlink got. But in terms of percentages, it's a very, very small percentage of the total. So it's not really a great consequence.
Okay.
Certainly not from our perspective. I mean, there's
Okay.
spots here. It's really kind of curious that there's all kinds of spots all over the state that Starlink got, but
That was the high cost project area. So part of the pre-application that we did late last year was enabling anyone who filled out a pre-application for a project area to identify high cost locations and recommend what should be done with them. So a lot of those that were earmarked and moved into a high cost area. So I haven't actually looked at too many of the winners to see exactly what Starlink won, but EC Fiber, I think those are basically long drops. And then the other is the high cost area. Jose may know more, but
Yeah.
Jose,
Yeah,
another
I can
question
give you-
here is: is the
I can-
VCB be planning on having a visual map showing the project areas and the winners? Because that would be a really useful thing.
I had, since as you know, I've been staying out of it. I believe they're going to be doing that, but right now, there's going to be negotiations, right? So I don't know. I can say though that both Amazon and the SpaceX, both of them had showed interest. In the end, only Starlink came in with the proposal, and they did get a small, what it amounts to just slightly over 1% of what was awarded in Vermont in terms of cash, not in terms of territory. The way I think it's said for the benefit of everybody else is that they got, I forget, higher percentage because of the number that they covered, but really, they're not. I think they're not happy. This is part of the reason why they're back and forth with everybody, because I think somebody in the administration, I think that the focus has been that get us the cheapest, and they're the cheapest, right? So that's how the way they view it, and so it's been a very frustrating thing for us to have conversations with them, because they'll say, suggest pretty directly that people could be a little more flexible, a little more to our friends. It's tragic, but they decide in the end who whether or not they approve of the awards, and I guess they feel they can leverage that to their advantage or somebody's advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been involved in anything, but I just peripherally have heard it's not but they didn't get that much. So
Yeah, and I think, we have covered this before, but the original underlying statute and even the revised policy notice, of course, had to comply with the underlying statute that allowed there to be a delineation of a priority broadband project, which required priority broadband projects, or required projects that were priority to be extensible to 5G and other sorts of advanced services, which I honestly don't think you can, with a straight face, say that a satellite service is extensible in that way. So I am presuming that the Starlink winning bids were not priority projects where they're in PAs where there were no other bidders.
Yeah, one of the things I believe though is done in the case of Vermont is that they use the satellite imagery to look at tree cover and things like that, and it specifically, there was somewhere in there, and it was written, of course, that there's no ordering people to cut trees down. Basically, that whatever is not visible because of the trees is not serviceable through satellite. And so that, that kind of, as Vermont, as has, very large percentage of forest cover. So that was another issue for them in terms of the bidding. I mean, we had technical specifications. We want people to be served. And, in some states, that's not the case because of the topography, or in some cases, when the new policy notice went out, they didn't do that much work to actually, benefit their residents, frankly, and ended up, I think, giving some pretty large awards to the satellite companies. So
Anyway,
much so
thank
that
you.
I understand. I don't know if you heard this, Ellie, I understand that somewhere they actually had to go back and rework their numbers because there was, I think, virtually the whole state was given to them at one point, and they said, "Oh no, you can't do that."
I can't even imagine. Anyway, we can probably talk about this all day, but I would like to move us along because we have a lot more to cover in the next 15 minutes. So, Steve.
yeah, so just to kind of restate my understanding, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ellie, there's a lot that we cannot spend money on right now until NEPA is sorted out. But we can spend money from buckets that we've had pre-existing, basically, like, for example, the contributions from towns and things like that. And from the perspective of a lot of the work that I see myself doing in coming days, it really doesn't involve spending any money. I got to get quotes and things like that. So there's a lot that we can do that doesn't risk some of our hard come by funds, with the exception of, as Ellie said, the detail design. We need the detail design. The detail design is kind of one of those critical path items. Without that in hand, we can't build. So, and it takes time. And to Ellie's point, we're not alone. There's going to be a lot of other providers across the country that are going to be getting in queue to get this work done. And so we're feeling really eager to start the process as quickly as we can. That's all, Ellie.
So there's no action we're requesting you to take at this point. This is really just a heads up. Steve and I are going to be meeting with JSI as soon as we possibly can, coming with a refinement. If we're able to get that before the governing board meeting next Tuesday, we'll take it to the governing board. If not, we'll take it to the next executive committee meeting. And yeah, and then the final thing that we are allowed to spend money on is limited equipment procurement. And so again, we may wish to have a look at any items that we think are going to have an excessively long lead time and decide if we want to spend anything there. So, like network electronics, for example, we can speak to Calix and say, all right, are you expecting there to be a run on these things, and should we get our ore in? The other one is cable. The last we looked, it was a couple of weeks, but you don't know how these things are going to go. So,
Ellie, do you know if that 72 finally came in again?
It did. It did, and it was undamaged, happily.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a bit of a drama there, but anyway. Okay, so that's it that's all that I have on beat. Anyone else have anything else? Nancy has dropped. Did she say she was going to drop?
I think she
did.
did.
We just lose her because we no longer